So, Hare Krishna. Thank you all the devotees for joining our weekly satsang program on Tuesday. So, in the last week, we discussed about the definition of Uttama Bhakti as it is presented in Bhagavatam 3rd canto by Lord Kapila. So, can anyone kindly recall what was that Lord Kapila describing the meaning of Uttama Bhakti? How does he define Uttama Bhakti?
Prabhuji, serving the Lord with our 14 senses with the intention of pleasing Lord, free of other desires and unobstructed by other processes.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? If something is missing, you can add that also.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, when one uses all his or her 14 senses under the guidance of Guru and Shastra to serve the Lord, then that activity is called the Uttama Bhakti. And that is for the pleasure of the Lord. That activity should be for.
Thank you. And what is the goal of practicing such a bhakti? Anyone? Why do one need to practice bhakti by engaging all one's 14 senses in the service of the Supreme Lord for Lord's pleasure?
Serving the Lord in the spiritual world in any of the rasas.
Okay, thank you. So, to continue that service in more personal way, currently we are serving the deity form of the Lord. The purpose of practicing this bhakti is to go back home back to Godhead and serve the Lord in personal way for the rest of eternity. So that is the goal. So last week we kind of stopped here with this slide. So I'll just briefly read it. So this will have the connection to the next discussion, the subsequent verses. So the purpose of practicing the bhakti that is defined in this verse is to develop bhava and prema onto the Supreme Lord. With bhava and prema only, one can serve the Lord in person and continue to serve the Lord for the rest of eternity. So how to develop that bhava? So here there are two options to come to bhava platform. One can develop natural action of the senses toward the Lord by ascending through the stage of Nishtha, Ruchi, and finally Asakti, by constant practice of engagement in pure bhakti as directed by Guru, following the dictates of scriptures. So kindly go read through the sentence very carefully. One can develop natural action of the senses toward the Lord. So performing bhakti at the level of bhava and prema means it will become a natural action of the senses toward the Lord. Right now, we need constant inspiration, constant impetus to practice bhakti, and constant guidance also. So we get guidance from scriptures, we get guidance from Guru, and we get guidance from Vaishnavas, Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. Continuously, we need some kind of inspiration and impetus. Of course, inspiration comes from these three Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. Impetus is to go back home back to Godhead. These two are very much required for us at every point of time so that we can continue to practice our bhakti. But when we become when we continue to practice bhakti without any impetus or without any inspiration, the performing bhakti becomes our natural activity. That means we are already in bhava platform, bhava or prema platform. That's why it is said that bhava is defined as natural action of the senses toward the Lord, and this one can attain after Anartha Nivrutti, performing Nishtha, Ruchi, Asakti. After Asakti, one enters into bhava. So this is one way of attaining to bhava, by taking shelter of Guru, Sadhu, Shastra and following their dictates and performing bhajana kriya. Eventually there will be Anartha Nivrutti, then Nishtha, Ruchi, Asakti, and one enters into bhava and prema. That is one way. The second way is So this is more intimate way. Here in the first case, so the devotees, because the devotees are following Guru Sadhu Shastra, there is always respect. So this is more into respectful category. Second one is more into the intimate category. Similar to the spontaneous attraction of the senses in the material world to husband or sons. So we can see all of us have family members within our family. So we may be as brahmacharis, all of you are grihasthas. In your family, all of you have parents and uncles, aunts, and also husband, wife, the spouse, and then children, and then friends, relatives, society members, etc. So we have people in all different relationships. So when we develop some relationship with somebody, like in the sense, by birth we will have relatives, so many relatives, and that relationship between people will be very affectionate, very thick, like with our siblings or with our parents or children. That is very thick and is very natural. There is no need to learn how to maintain that, how to execute different duties in terms of that relationship, etc. Nothing like that. They are very spontaneous and very natural. Just like we have relationship with our family members in all different mellows, one may also develop spontaneous attraction or spontaneous action of the senses without awareness of the dictates of the scriptures, in which the senses act according to Bhakti Shastras, previous to or after taking instructions from Guru due to understanding outstanding impressions arising from the mercy of great devotees in this or in the previous life. So we might have practiced bhakti in our previous life so effectively. So in this life, we have natural affection to practice bhakti and natural affinity to serve the Lord in one of the four primary relationships, either as a lover in Madhurya Rasa, or as a child in Vatsalya Rasa, or as a friend in Sakya Rasa, or as a master in Dasya Rasa. So this relationship can be very affectionate, very intimate, and very thick. That will be possible only by the mercy of some pure devotee, which is obtained in this life or in the previous life. So this kind of bhakti is called as Raganuga Bhava Bhakti. So one can come to Bhava Bhakti either by practicing Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, or one can come to Bhava Bhakti or by practicing Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. So these are the two ways one can come to the natural performance of bhakti. So this is where we stopped. The spontaneity or bhava stage developed from Vaidhi Bhakti as excellence of quantity. That means Aishwarya. People are in Aishwarya Bhava. The devotees will be in Aishwarya Bhava. So examples are given in the future verses 34 to 37. We'll discuss about this, what kind of bhava they will exhibit when they come to bhava platform by practicing Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti from 34 to 37. And the same thing is explained in NOD chapter 2 to 14. What kind of sadhana they perform and what kind of bhava they receive. That is explained in 17 to 19. Second type of spontaneity generated from Raganuga as excellence of type, intimacy or rasa. Rasa indicates Madhurya or Vatsalya or Sakya or Dasya. At the stage of sadhana and sadhya, an example is given 38. And in the verse number 38, we'll understand what do you mean by Raganuga sadhana and Raganuga bhava. Both will be seen here. In the nectar of devotion, Raganuga sadhana bhakti is explained in 15 to 16 and bhava bhakti is explained in 17 to 19. So in addition to these two, this is bhava bhakti through Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, this is Raganuga bhava bhakti through Raganuga sadhana bhakti. But what kind of sadhana one practices as a Vaidhi sadhaka, as part of Vaidhi sadhana? So that is explained in 39 to 40. So that also we will discuss. So this is explained from 2 to 14 of NOD. And now we will start today's verse. Bhakti alone is the result sought in these two types of bhakti, in these two types of sadhanas, since they have no material desire. Liberation is the unsought result. The devotees, those who are either practicing Vaidhi sadhana bhakti or Raganuga sadhana bhakti, both are only aspiring for Bhava bhakti or Prema bhakti, either in Aishwarya or in Madhurya. According to the mellow of the devotee, they can aspire either in Aishwarya Bhava or in Madhurya. So that is fine. But the goal is to come to Bhava and Prema platform, not to attain Sahajya Mukti. So here liberation means Sahajya Mukti. The devotees never aspire for Sahajya Mukti. Instead, Sahajya comes on its own accord. It is an unsought result, unexpected, undesired result. That's why in the previous verse, it is mentioned that Animitta Bhagavati Bhakti Siddhe Ghariyasi. Performing natural bhakti at the bhava level, it is much superior to the happiness one experiences having entered into Sahajya Mukti. When a jnani or yogi, when he enters into Sahajya Mukti, what kind of happiness that person experiences? That is nowhere in comparison to the happiness can be experienced by a devotee who is executing bhakti in the Bhava platform. So in Nectar of Devotion, I don't know whether it is already started or going to start. In the very first chapter, after the introduction is over, it is said that bhakti has 6 characteristics. During the stages of sadhana, all the way from Ado Shraddha, Tata Sadhutanga, Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivrutti, Nishta, Ruchi, Asakti, all the way up to Asakti, the devotees will experience Klesha Agni and Shubhada, removal of miseries and bringing forth of auspiciousness. In the life of a devotee, the auspiciousness will come out and the miseries will be removed. That is the meaning of Klesha Agni and Shubhada. Then the devotee enters into Bhava platform. In the Bhava platform, devotees will experience 2 more characteristics of bhakti. So one is Sandrananda Visheshatma and Moksha Lagutakrit. Sandrananda Visheshatma, Moksha Lagutakrit. Sudurlabha and Moksha Lagutakrit. Sudurlabha means coming to the platform of Bhava is very rare. It is not that easy. And having come to Bhava platform, what will be one's mood? Moksha Lagutakrut. That person sees Sahajya Mukti as very insignificant goal to attain. For a devotee who has come to Bhava platform, he never aspires to become or to enter into Brahman, to become one with Brahman or to attain Sahajya Mukti. For him, moksha becomes lagu, insignificant. And then eventually in due course of time, when devotee enters into Prema platform, then one experiences Sandrananda Visheshatma, the experience of Sandra Ananda, condensed form of bliss. Whatever is the bliss of having gone to Vaikuntha, having become an associate of Supreme Lord, can be experienced even while in Prema platform itself. That is Ghana Ananda, Sandra Ananda Visheshatma. And then Sri Krishna Akarshanichasa. Lord Krishna becomes completely controlled by a devotee who is in Prema. Just like we many times hear the 10th canto pastimes, like when Lord Krishna was small boy, about 1 to 3 years old in between. The gopis would say, the elderly gopis, motherly type of gopis would say, so my dear Krishna, please dance. I'll give you some butter. Krishna would dance. They would say that, my dear Krishna, please clap. I will give you some butter. Krishna would clap. And they would say that, my dear Krishna, please lift so and so weight. Krishna would lift it, very struggling very hard. So they would give some butter. And they would ask, my dear Krishna, please dance. Please sing, like that. So Krishna comes completely controlled by devotees in Prema platform. So that is called Sri Krishna Akarshanichasa. So these are the different characteristics of bhakti at its various levels. So now let us see that we have already seen Moksha Lagutakrut. So in connection to that, this verse goes little bit ahead. Jarayati ashu yakosham nigirnam analoyata. So what does a devotee experience having come to the platform of Bhava and Prema? Or What is the situation of a devotee when the devotee comes to the platform of bhava and prema? This bhakti, this means that bhava bhakti quickly destroy the subtle body. Jarayati ashuya kosham. Jara, janma mrityu jara vyadi. So what is the meaning of jara?
Old age.
Old age. So what is the meaning of old age?
Jara.
No, not the Sanskrit word. What do you mean by old age?
The soul is
Disease.
eager to change the body.
Weak body, dependency.
Old age indicates we are about to die. It is a sign of arrival of death. So that is the meaning of jara. Jarayati ashya kosham. Quickly destroys the subtle body. Having come to the platform of bhava means that is the destruction of, that is a symptom of destroying the subtle body. Just as digestive fire consumes food. Nigirnam analo yata. Analo refers to the Jataragni, digestive fire. Just like digestive fire consumes all the food that we eat. So similarly, Bhava Bhakti consumes the subtle body. So now I would like to understand from all of you. So why is it that subtle body need to be destroyed, or why is that subtle body needs to be consumed completely? What is the reason?
Prabhuji, can I say some answer?
Please.
Yeah, means according to me, means once the person dies, the subtle body is taken as per his karma to the Yamaloka or wherever. So that subtle body, the desires what we have are still there with that subtle body. Means our mind, intelligence, false ego, and chetana, those are there. So unless until that subtle body is not destroyed, we will not get liberated from the cycle of birth and death.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to try? Why does the subtle body needs to be consumed or destroyed? Okay, we'll go ahead with what Mohanjosh Prabhu has mentioned. Such a bhakti quickly destroys the subtle body like digestive fire consumes food. So when we eat food, food gets consumed in due course of time. So that kind of example is given. So why this example is used, we'll see in the future slides. So before going to the future slide, I would like to quickly understand from all of you, those who are studying Bhakti Shastri and those who are not studying Bhakti Shastri also. Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 verse number 11. So if you have Bhagavad Gita book with you, you can open. So one of you can read the shloka, and whoever have understood the meaning of that shloka can tell me. Not the translation as it is, but what do you understand from that shloka? That I want to know. Two 11. Asochan anvasocastam prajnavadamsha jabashate gatasun nagatasumcha nanu sochanti pandita. What
Hare
What is-
Krishna, Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, something problem with my sound system.
seems that two people are using in your home. So anyone, what is your understanding of this verse? If you have a book in front of you, you can read the translation, but don't read loudly. But tell me your understanding.
Prabhuji, actually it is that the life air goes away, and those who are wise do not lament for the gross bodies from which actually we have just department. So actually that is the meaning. That means we should not lament for whatever has gone. We have departed from the material body, and that body, for that body we should not lament for that. And the one who actually knows this is learned, and therefore, because the one who is born is about to die, and so the body is not important as the soul.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? From this verse alone, what do you understand?
That the subtle body is indestructible.
Subtle body is indestructible. Anyone else? The wise do not lament for the gross body or for the subtle body. Nanu sochanti pandita. A pandita understands that gross body is very much temporary, and subtle body, it may not be so temporary, but it is also temporary. So for the loss of either gross body or subtle body, an intelligent person or a person in knowledge does not lament. So on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Arjuna is lamenting for the death of, anticipating the death of Bhishma, Drona, Krupa, Shalya, etc., all the elderly members of the Kuru family. So Lord Krishna is saying that you are crying, and while simultaneously speaking the words like a Pandita, but a Pandita does not lament for the destruction of either the gross body or the destruction of the subtle body. So in our daily experience, the destruction of the gross body is called as death. When a person dies, the gross body becomes useless. It cannot function anymore. So the soul, giving up that gross body, taking the subtle body along with it, enters into the womb of another mother and accepts another gross body. And after that gross body becomes useless, then taking the subtle body enters into another gross body. Like that, moves on from one gross body to other gross body. Though gross bodies are destroyed very periodically, very quickly, one after the other, but subtle body remains with the person. When the subtle body also becomes destroyed, that is called liberation or mukti. The destruction of the subtle body is called mukti. The destruction of the gross body is called death, mrityu. So when one comes to Bhava platform, the subtle body, that means that subtle body, as Mohan Joshi Prabhu indicated, which carries all the karma vasanas, which carries unlimited number of desires, gets destroyed. Then when there are no material desires, there will be no more birth, material birth. As long as we maintain material desires in the core of our heart, we will continue to take birth in this material world. So it is like that.
Prabhuji, I had one question here.
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, when the subtle body goes, then the soul also is there in the subtle body at that time. Soul also goes with the subtle body.
No, instead we should say that subtle body goes along with the soul.
Okay.
It is soul which wants to go. Take subtle body along with it. So now let us see what is the meaning of this Nigirana Manalo Yata, etc. That bhakti destroys subtle body. That bhakti refers to Bhava Bhakti or Prema Bhakti. However, the distinction of this liberation from the liberation caused by Jnana, that is Sahajya Mukti, is shown with an example. It is like the fire of digestion devouring edible items like food. So, in the case of Sahajya Mukti, the gross body and subtle body are completely destroyed. There will be no more material identity. Then the soul enters into Brahman. After entering into Brahman, the soul will not have any more spiritual identity also. So in Brahman or in Sahajya Mukti, the soul neither has material identity nor have spiritual identity. It is complete destruction of the gross body and subtle body. But Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti is not like that. So that is explained in relation to the digestion of the food. What exactly happens in the digestion of food? That is somewhat similar to how Bhava Bhakti destroys the subtle body. That we will try to understand now. And also what happens in the case of the practice of Jnana or Ashtanga Yoga. How the subtle body gets destroyed during the practice of Jnana or Yoga. That also we kindly understand. So now let us see what do you mean by digestion. Having no alternative for nourishing the body, the fire of digestion destroys only the useless portions of the eaten food, but nourishes the life airs, that means pranas, the senses, and the 7 dhatus of the body by the good portions of the food. When we eat food, the rice, dal, sabji, chapati has 2 portions. Something is useless, something is useful. So the digestive fire burns away the useless portion of the food and takes out the nutrients from the useful portion of the food and takes care of the life airs, the pranas, and takes care of the senses and takes care of the body itself, which is made up of 7 dhatus. So this is the function of digestive fire. Digestive fire is different from the natural fire. So during our lunchtime or dinner time, maybe after this class, all of us will take prasadam. So our plate will have some eatables. Of course, according to your nature and diet, you might have, some might have roti chapati, roti sabji or chapati sabji, or some might have rice dal sabji, etc. etc. If that food which is there on the plate, if it is put into the fire, what do we get? If the food that is there in the ash, yeah. If the same food is eaten by a person, so some wood becomes a waste product and it will be expelled the next day, and some food will nourish the body. So that which comes out is the useless food, and that which nourishes, that is useless portion of the food. So this is the difference between normal fire and digestive fire. Normal fire indiscriminately burns away the entire food, but digestive fire sees what is useful, what is not useful. It burns away the useless stuff and it takes the useful stuff. So that is the difference. By this, the body gains strength. Body gains the strength of muscles, senses, and mind. The body becomes strong, and the senses become strong, and the mind becomes stable when we eat food. If you don't give food to the body, to the stomach, maybe once or twice or thrice or 4 times, the bodily muscles becomes weak, senses become weak, mind becomes weak. So it is like that. Similarly, bhakti destroys only the bad portions of our body. What are the bad portions? The bad portions, that means the material aspects of the sense objects, such as sound, etc. The material senses and the material sense devatas. So bhakti acts like the digestive fire. Jnana and yoga acts like the normal fire. The normal fire will burn away the gross body, then burn away the entire food. So similarly, the jnana or yoga burn away the entire gross body as well as subtle body completely. So without any identity. But in the case of bhakti, only the material aspects of the gross body and subtle body are burnt away. The spiritual aspects of the gross body and subtle body will remain intact. In relation to the sense objects the senses and the sense devatas. Adibhuta, Adhyatma, and Adidaiva. The sense objects are called Adibhuta, the senses are called Adhyatma, and the sense devatas are called Adidaiva. So the spiritual aspects will remain. So I would like to give you an example. Take the example of hearing. So what kind of things we would like to hear in a day, morning to evening? What are the different things that we get to hear throughout the day? Hare Krishna, anyone?
Prajalpa, music, many other things.
And don't be so general. Try to be specific.
Prabhuji, we like to hear good things about ourselves.
Okay,
Then
forget about
sometimes about the-
liking or not liking. What are the different things that we get to hear in a day? In a day of 12 hours from morning 6 to evening 6.
Prabhuji, sometimes gossip, sometimes people get angry, so we hear harsh words sometimes throughout the
I'm not asking the adjectives. I'm actually expecting some core details.
What is there for lunch or dinner?
Perfect. Or so what we are supposed to do today? Okay, then we make calls to our parents who are at long distance away from we are in city and parents are in village. And we talk to them, we find out where their whereabouts, and we go to office. We'll ask all of our colleagues what are the tasks pending for today, and we conduct some meeting, etc., etc., etc. And by the way, since we are all devotees, we also get up early in the morning and do some morning aarti, whatever way possible, then sit and chant some rounds. Some of us might chant 16 rounds, some of us might chant few rounds, and later on other rounds. And we prepare our meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and we also have it. While having it, we talk about it, out of the food taste, etc., etc. And if some friends are there, we'll share good moments. If some non-friendly people are there, we share some bad words with them, something like that. So in a day, in general, we get to hear so many things. So now, as of now, we are simple sadhakas. So we get to speak and we get to hear so many things of so many varieties. When the same person comes to the Bhava platform, what that devotee in the Bhava platform or Prema platform would hear or would talk? What we can expect a devotee in Bhava platform to talk or to hear?
Krishna's pastime and his glories.
Okay, then
They could talk about the good qualities of other devotees, learn
Okay.
from them.
then
The person who is doing seva, they talk about the seva thing. They say, we'll do this today. Today the Krishna is looking like that.
mm,
And the dress is worn like that. So the ornaments are looking good on him. So they describe what they see in the temple, what they have, how the food was, or today prasadam was there. So
Everything is directed towards the Lord. All the questions in the material world, similar questions, but directed towards the Lord.
Currently, we maybe think about like, let me do this. Let me prepare this food stuff. My children will like it. So let me do this food stuff. My friends might like it. So let me interact with them. I have spent, it's long time that I have spoken to them, something like that. We have such kind of expectations, such kind of things that we plan to do as of now. But when a devotee comes to Bhava platform, all such things does not remain. The devotee always anticipates, how should I serve the Lord today? How should I make the Lord happy today? As of now, today we have so many people to please. But when devotee comes to Bhava platform and Prema platform, for him, his pleasure lies in the pleasure of Supreme Lord alone. So currently we have 100,000 things, But when devotee comes to Baba platform, only one thing remains. All the remaining things are like burnt away. Just like the useless foodstuff is burnt away by digestive fire. Only, even the same thing, the hearing and talking. Now also we are doing hearing and talking. The devotee in the Baba platform also will do hearing and talking. Now we have 100 subject matters to hear and talk. But in the Baba platform, the devotee has only one subject in relation to Krishna, hearing and talking. But that one subject might be of 100 varieties. So this is how bhakti functions. This is the meaning of coming to the Baba platform. And that is explained through digestion. Hope you are able to follow. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji.
I'm not saying something new or hi-fi philosophy, some simple things that we do today. So in relation to that, I'm trying to connect to what it means to be in the Baba platform. It does not destroy the good portions of the sense objects and natural senses which are related to the Lord. By these sense objects and senses, the spiritual body of the devotee appears. So whatever body we have, this body will have two aspects, the material aspect and spiritual aspect. That means as long as the body is used for the material activities, we can say that is material aspect. As long as the body is used for spiritual activity, that we can say spiritual aspect. But when the devotee comes to the platform of Bhava or Prema, the devotee uses this body only for the spiritual activities. That means the body is almost spiritualized. So Bhava and Prema is not like a normal fire which burns away the food indiscriminately. Instead, Bhava or Prema, it is like the digestive fire which burns away only the material aspect of our body and senses. It retains the spiritual aspects of the body and senses. In the normal time, we get to hear many things, both material things, and we also get to hear Krishna Katha. But when one comes to Bhava Prema platform, the only hearing is about Krishna. Or one Ishtadev, if one is devotee of Lord Ram, about Lord Ram, if one is devotee of Lord Narasimha, Narasimha's pastimes, something like that. Only about the Lord. So this is how bhakti functions.
So Prabhuji, how is it different in the jnana and yoga stage? Same thing.
I'm telling you, na, jnana yoga means the body is completely destroyed like normal fire. Normal fire burns away the entire food. Both are burnt completely. So that we will see. I have quoted some examples in the future slides. So what it means in jnana and yoga.
Okay, thank you.
Thus, when the scriptures talk about destruction of the body and senses, they refer to the material aspects of the subtle body, not subtle body completely. So now, the path of jnana is incomplete in destruction of the subtle body. So I have taken the example of fire. Just like normal fire, it completely burns away the food, but Bhagavatam goes one step ahead. Apparently, externally seems to be complete burning, but still the remnants remain. The remnants have the potency to reborn. With that intention, there is an example quoted here in the 6th canto of Bhagavatam. Even the practice of jnana and yoga does not burn away the subtle body completely. That is mentioned here. Tapasa brahmacharyena samena cha damena cha tyagena satya sauchabhyam yamena niyamena va dehavag buddhijam dhira dharmajna shraddhayanvita kshipanti yagam mahad api venugulman ivanala. So he says that the jnanis and yogis in their entire life, they practice severe hard sadhana, strong and a very hard sadhana. That sadhana contains all these things mentioned here. By avoiding enjoyments, tapasa, they continuously go through tapasya. By avoiding association with women, brahmacharyena. So in order to practice jnana or ashtanga yoga, one need to be either in vanaprastha, sannyasa or brahmacharya ashram. So it is one of the recommendations. We discussed many times. If at all one want to practice jnana or ashtanga yoga, they need to take renunciation, either vanaprastha or sannyasa, go to forest and then practice. So that is there. By controlling the mind as much as possible, by controlling the external senses, samenacha damenacha, the mind and senses should be kept under complete control. By giving in charity, tyagena, as long as one is at home, even after going to vanaprastha also, whatever one has at one's disposal, if somebody comes begging for charity, it should be given in charity. That is the sadhana. By following truthfulness and cleanliness, satya sauchabhyam, they need to follow complete truthfulness and complete cleanliness. And by following the yamas like non-violence and niyamas like japa, yamena niyamenava. So yamas means, niyama means rules, and yama means regulations. Regulations are non-violence, no meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, no illicit, etc. And niyamas like japa, performing some japa, reading shastra, reading Vedas, etc. etc. The wise man, an intelligent man, dhira, knowers of dharma, dharmajna, filled with faith, shraddhayanvita, he had complete faith on the process of jnana, destroys even the great sin, kshipanti agam mahadapi. So whatever sins are there in one's quota, all those sins are completely destroyed, arising from the body, words and intelligence in one's previous life, Devavag Buddhism, just like fire destroys a clump of bamboos. In a forest which is filled with so many bamboo trees, when the two bamboo trees, because of the huge wind, they collide with each other. With that friction, there will be a spark. Eventually, that spark will lit up fire. The entire bamboo forest will be burnt to ashes. But there could be some bamboo seeds which are there beneath the earth. When during summer, when the earth opens up cracks, some of the bamboo seeds might go into the cracks. Those seeds does not get burnt by this forest fire. Eventually, after the summer season, when there is rainy season, the seeds will further grow and they again become one more bamboo forest. So this comparison is given in relation to jnana. By following this kind of hardships, hard sadhana, one may control the gross body, one may control the subtle body to the maximum extent possible. But when there is the next rainy season, when there is the next moment of opportunity, the subtle body again becomes alive and starts inspiring the person to perform material activities. So this is one of the difficulty in the path of jnana. From the external point of view, the upper portion of all the trees are burnt away. But in the cracks, within the cracks of the earth, there could be some seeds. They are not burnt because of the forest fire. Eventually, when the next rain comes, that will grow. This is one of the limitation of the jnana. So, in that way. This comes in the 6th canto, 1st chapter, verse number 13 and 14. In Bhagavad Gita also, there is one such verse. So, this verse is 437. If you have Bhagavad Gita with you, you can open 437. Yatai damshi samsiddhir. So, I can't see here verse. Jnanagni sarva karmani bhasmatat kurte tata. As a blazing fire burns to ashes all fuel wood, the fire of knowledge turns to ashes all actions. Jnanagni sarva karmani bhasmasat kurte tata. So the fire of knowledge, the fire of jnana practice will burn away all actions. That means the reactions to one's actions. Whatever activities one might have performed in the previous lives, the results, the reactions of all those activities are waiting to take new births. But jnana will burn away all the reactions. It's like that it is mentioned. So it is like that.
So, Prabhuji, can we say it is burning all the reactions, but not that in case of jnana and yoga, it is burning all the reactions, but whereas in bhakti, it is burning even the tendency. That is why the seeds are not there. Is it something like that?
Yeah, thank you for reminding that. So I'll take the same example a little further. The bamboo tree can produce hundreds and thousands of seeds. But now forest fire has come. The tree is burnt, and whatever seeds are there on the top of the tree, they are also burnt, and there will be no scope of future seeds. Because the tree is burnt, it will not give any more seeds in the upcoming months. But whatever seeds it already given, those seeds which fell down and went into the cracks of the earth, they have the potency to grow in the form of another tree. So when Jnana says that Jnana Agni Sarva Karmani Bhasmasat Kurte Arjuna, so the explanation comes in the future slide. Anyway, you asked, I'm explaining. Whatever results that are waiting to appear in the future lives, they are all destroyed. But whatever supposed to come forward in the very lifetime, in this lifetime itself, that will not be destroyed. Just like the seeds which are already fell from the tree and which is hiding within the cracks of the earth cannot be destroyed. So they are called with different names. Those terminology will also come in your Nectar of Devotion. So those devotees who are doing Bhakshya, they will get to know all these things. But that in the very first chapter only. But anyway, I will talk about them in the future slides here itself. So here you see, knowledge arising from purity of the heart destroys all karmas except the prarabdha karmas. Prarabdha karma means those which are being experienced in this life. Those karmas a person supposed to experience in this life, they cannot be destroyed. Because we have already taken this birth in this particular body. So whatever happiness or misery one is supposed to experience in this body, it is already predetermined at the time of birth. That cannot be removed by Jnana. Just like whatever seeds already fell from the tree and which are hidden in the cracks of the earth, they cannot be destroyed by any kind of forest fire. The forest fire can destroy the upcoming seeds from the tree, because tree itself gets burnt, and whatever seeds are there on the top of the tree, they also gets burnt. And whatever, if there is no forest fire, the next season also tree might have given another hundreds of seeds, but all of them are also burnt. They will not take birth only at all. So that Jnana can do, but it will not destroy the prarabdha karmas, those which are being experienced in this life. Aprarabdha karmas are those which are waiting for the future lifetimes, not in this lifetime. So all the aprarabdha karmas are destroyed, but not prarabdha karmas. Jnana destroys aprarabdha karmas, but not prarabdha karmas. Bhakti destroys both aprarabdha and prarabdha. So this is the difference between Jnana and Bhakti. In one sense, in simple terms, Jnana, like forest fire, destroys the future miseries, but not the current one, not what is supposed to be coming in this body. That will not be destroyed by Jnana. But when it comes to Bhakti, when a person comes to the Bhava platform, all one's current or future miseries are completely destroyed. How it is so, the details with lot of examples will be discussed in your NOD course in the very first chapter. Thus, Bhakti does a complete job. Yatagni Susamruddharchi Karoti Edamshi Basmatat Tata Mad Vishaya Bhakti Uddhavainamshi Krishnasha. So, somewhat similar verse which is there in Bhagavad Gita here above, same comes in the Bhagavatam 11th canto in Uddhava Gita. There Lord Krishna speaks this verse in Bhakti, in relation to Bhakti, wherein he says that, my dear Uddhava, just as blazing fire burns to ashes all the fuel, similarly, devotional service in relationship with me burns to ashes all sinful reactions. Here it says that Sarva Karmani, that indicates only aprarabdha karmas. The future karmas are completely destroyed, but not the present karmas. But in case of Bhakti, both aprarabdha and prarabdha both are destroyed. So this is the distinction between other process such as Jnana or Yoga and Bhakti. So now let us take into the digestion example. With a person's endeavor, fire of digestion digests the food. He does not know how the food gets digested. After our lunch or after our dinner, we go for a walk sometime, then we resume our work in the office or at home or wherever we are. We perform activities. While performing activities, without our knowledge only, the food gets digested, and we get hungry when the next time for next meal arrives. So we do not know how the food gets digested. So that is what happens. Similarly, bhakti liberates the devotee who daily performs hearing and chanting and experiences a sweet taste without striving for liberation at all. The devotee does not even ask how or when he will get liberation. So devotee only executes devotional activities. He does not anticipate how and when the liberation will come. It will come automatically. Just like a person after having his meal does not always inquire, are you getting digested or not? When we are absorbed in our work, as a matter of time, the food gets digested. So bhakti also acts like that. When the food gets digested, our body gets nourished. Same way, when a person practices bhakti, eventually the liberation comes on its own accord. One no need to inquire for it. So how does it take place? Just as a person walking on the path steps over a hoof print of a cow without seeking it out, so he attains liberation. So for a devotee who is sincerely practicing bhakti consisting of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Mandanam, Dasam, Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam, for those devotees getting liberation is like, actually devotees are not at all interested in Sayujya Mukti, but for the devotees getting liberation is like crossing a puddle made by calf. In the rainy season, when the cow and calf goes to grazing on the muddy roads, when the calf, its front leg or hind legs, when they are walking, they make an impression. And afterwards, when rain comes, that impression, that small hole is filled with water. And for a devotee who is practicing sincere bhakti, having come to Bhava platform, for the devotee, Bhava is like the water in this calf's footprint. And the devotee does not care for the water in this calf's footprint. He simply steps over and moves ahead. That means the devotees after Bhava and Prema platform, they go through impersonal or Brahmajyoti, and they crossing it, seeing it as a small insignificant cow's footprint, and then they go ahead into Vaikuntha, where they can directly serve the Lord. So this is how the devotees, without interest, they actually leave behind the impersonal Brahman and then go ahead and enter into Vaikuntha. So it is like that. Even Bhakti goes to a step ahead. It says that the devotees lack knowledge of the three stages of Brahman, that is Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan. Even the devotees who are practicing Bhakti, even in spite of not having proper knowledge or complete knowledge about Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan, but by the practice of Bhakti and by the mercy of the Lord, they gain knowledge in the form of experiencing Lord's form, qualities, pastimes, powers and sweetness, and then enter into and then attains liberation as a byproduct. So even though devotees, sometimes, some examples, even though they have not studied Shastra very systematically, very thoroughly, that they don't have proper knowledge of Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan, but still following the instructions of spiritual master, if they practice bhakti with sincerity and without any ulterior motives, they will experience Lord's Nama, Rupa, Guna, Leela. Rupa, Guna, Leela and Nama, etc. Powers and sweetness, everything, all the different aspects of the Supreme Lord will be experienced by such a devotee by the mercy of the Lord and by the mercy of a pure devotee in due course of time. Even if they start bhakti without having proper understanding and proper knowledge of who the Bhagavan is. Just by the process of practicing bhakti, everything will take place. It is like eating food. Even though we may not have so much scientific understanding of how food gets digested, the biologists, they will say that. So in the within the body, there will be a lot of enzymes, with lot of secretions. They will start producing and they will start digesting, they will start burning, and they will start extracting the essence from the food, and that will go and become blood, etc., etc. That will go all over the body and it will nourish the body. So they might speak so much technical way, but all of us, without that knowledge also, we eat and we forget about it, and the food gets digested and body gets nourished. We remain healthy. Bhakti acts like that. So that is the understanding. So in order to digest the food, in order to get the benefits of eating food, we don't have to be the biologist who knows very well about our biological structure. The same way, in order to go back home back to Godhead, even though one does not know the complete knowledge or information about the three aspects of Supreme Lord, Absolute Truth, but by the practice of bhakti itself, as instructed by the spiritual master, one can go back home back to Godhead and become an eternal associate of Supreme Lord. So this is the glory of bhakti. This is how bhakti benefits one. So the example is given here. The Lord is not attained by contemplation. Contemplation means jnana. By meditation means yoga. Or by abundant hearing, that means abundant study of the Vedic Shastras. He is attained by Lord's choice. The Lord reveals his form to that person whom he chooses. Anyone and everyone cannot become an associate of the Supreme Lord. Just by contemplation, just by meditation, just by reading Vedas, one cannot become Lord's associate. One becomes Lord's associate only when Lord chooses. Because only by knowing the Lord or by experiencing the Lord in his Nama Rupa Gunalila, which is only possible by the practice of bhakti as instructed by spiritual master, one can attain immortality or liberation, or one can become the associate of the Supreme Lord. Tameva viditva atimrutyumeti. So it is like that. Some example is given here. So it is not that anyone and everyone can become an associate of Supreme Lord. The Lord had the prerogative whom to accept and whom not to accept. So it is like that. So, but someone might say that, but it is not possible to know the form of the Lord completely. Yes, it is not possible to know the form of the Lord completely. That is true. But at the same time, we should be careful. There is a Kena Upanishad says one phrase, says that he who says he does not know the Lord, knows him. And he who says he knows the Lord does not know him. Yasya amatam tasya matam. Matam yasya navedasa. Those who say that I do not know the Lord, who the Lord is. That means really, actually, a devotee never says that I am a devotee. A devotee always says that I am the most insignificant, I am the most sinful, wretched. Similarly, those who say that I don't know about the Lord, only they know. Those who actually say that I know about the Lord, those who boast that I have knowledge, I have this, I have that, they actually do not know. So this is one of the important quality of characteristics of devotees. Yasya amatam tasya matam. Those who say that I don't know, actually they know. Matam yasya, those who say that I know, na vedasa. They do not know the Lord properly. So it is like that. So it says that because you are unlimited, you means Lord, because the Lord is unlimited, neither the devatas nor even you yourself can ever reach the end of your glories. The Vedas personified actually praying like this. This comes in the 10th canto 87th chapter. So the Vedas themselves are saying that since you are unlimited, neither the devatas nor the hosts of the rishis do not know you. Even you yourself does not know your glories. Even the Shrutis, following their methods of eliminating everything separate from him, become successful by revealing you as their final goal. Even the Vedas, ultimately, they tell that you are the final goal. By practicing all the rules and regulations that are prescribed in the Vedas, one will get to know the Supreme Lord, not in the very beginning. So it is like that. So taking reference or taking information from all these things, that liberation being talked about in this verse is not impersonal liberation. It is not Sayujya Mukti, which is generally obtained by the Jnanis or Yogis. But here the liberation means Salokya, Sarishti, Samupya or Sarupya Mukti. That is being indicated. Even though the devotee does not aspire for it, but Bhakti awards it. Just like the digestive fire, whether the person wants it or not, will digest the food if the digestive fire is good. So it is like that. Just as the fire of digestion from the moment of food is eaten begins to digest it, but completes the process after 9 or 12 hours. So this is there in the Bhagavatam. The food gets digested after 9 to 12 hours. So, complete digestion. So from the beginning of devotional practice, Bhakti begins to destroy material life in the form of lamentation and illusion, but completes the process of destruction only after some time. For some, it may be few lifetimes. So when we start Bhakti, the Kleshagni and Shuddha already started. But when it completely happens, it will take some time. It will not happen immediately. Just like food. Once the food is eaten, it will take some 6 to 9 hours to get digested completely. Similarly, Bhakti also will take some time. So what all will happen in due course of time by the practice of Bhakti are mentioned here. This is a verse from Canto 1, chapter 7, text number 7. Yasyam vai shruyamanayam Krishne paramapurushe bhakti rutpaddate pumsha shoka moha bhayapaha. So it says that there are two benefits of practicing sadhana bhakti. Sadhana bhakti consisting of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. When we do all these things as a sadhaka, eventually we come to the platform of Bhava and Prema. So this bhakti refers to Bhava or Prema. Unto whom? Krishna, who is Paramapurusha, the original personality of Godhead. But before Bhava or Prema comes, there are so many side benefits. What are the side benefits? Shoka, Moha, Bhaya, Apaha. The lamentation, illusion, and fear. All these things are gradually removed from the person's heart. All of us, as of now, are constantly afflicted by Shoka, Moha, Bhaya. Whether we accept it or not, all of us, we have these three things within our heart. We always lament if something goes wrong, we always lament for it. And we are always afraid whether something will happen properly or not, something which we are expecting tomorrow, will it happen or not? That fear is there always. And moha. In the present, we always estimate wrong way ourselves. So we are always in illusion. That's how it is indicated. We may be something, we may be capable of doing something, but we may overestimate or we may underestimate ourselves. That is called moha. So like that, we are, all these secondary influences will be removed gradually. Eventually, our sadhana bhakti will bring us to bhava bhakti or prema bhakti. So thus, even at the stage of sadhana, when lamentation and illusion have not been completely destroyed, one should not consider him to be in samsara, for he is practicing bhakti. So when a devotee takes to the practice of bhakti, it is by default, shoka, moha, bhaya will be removed. All the material qualities will be removed from that person. But today we may not see. All of us are practicing sadhana, still we have so much shoka, moha, bhaya. That means that we are not practicing bhakti. It is not like that. It will take some time to come into action. But we should continue to practice bhakti so that it will manifest. So just by seeing some inappropriate things today within us, we cannot blame a devotee, practicing devotee, that okay, he's not a devotee, he's wrong. That's why he's suffering like that. Not like that. So the shoka, moha, bhaya, in order to completely eradicate, it will take some time. Just like the food to get digested completely, it will take some time. Something like that. So even while practicing, if you may apparently do some mistake, some sinful activity, or if you see somebody else doing some mistakes or some sinful activity, we should never find fault with them. That is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita chapter 9 verse number 30 and 31. Apiche Suduracharo Bhajate Mam Ananyabhak Sadhureva Samantavya Samyak Vyavasthaisa. Lord Krishna says that even though if one of my devotee performs Sudurachara, a very bad activity, but still one should never criticize that person, because that person should be treated as a sadhu itself, because Samyak Vyavasthaisa is still engaging bhakti only. He is not given a bhakti, because bhakti has that potency to remove shoka moha bhaya. Because of moha or because of bhaya, a person might have done some mistake, some sinful activity, but just because of that one should not criticize that devotee, because the devotees continue to practice bhakti with more regret and repentance. So very soon he will come to the bhava platform. Shipram bhavati dharmatma shashvak shantim nigachati kaunteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashati. So Lord said that very soon that person will come to bhava or prema platform. When he takes a bhakti again with repentance and remorse, he will very soon come to bhava platform. Therefore, my dear Arjuna, go and boldly declare that my devotee will never punish. Knowingly, unknowingly, one may commit sinful activity once in a while, but as long as the devotee continues to perform bhakti, will very soon come to the platform of bhava or prema. This is the assurance Lord Krishna gives to the devotees. So now, again, the same summary. So coming to this bhava platform or prema platform, action of the senses for the Lord, divide of jnana and karma, divide of other material desires or siddhis, desires for siddhis, following the rules mentioned in the devotional scriptures, using the mantra given by the Guru. So whatever mantra Guru has given, Harinam mantra or Gayatri mantra, but which is small in quantity, is sadhana bhakti without spontaneity. So this is the definition of sadhana bhakti. Sadhana bhakti means divide of jnana, divide of karma, divide of the desires for mukti, siddhis, but following the rules mentioned in the devotional scriptures and following the instructions of spiritual masters, chanting the mantra given by the Guru. So, which we may not be able to do throughout the day, but whatever little time we can spend, that is called sadhana bhakti. So in sadhana, we don't have spontaneity. We don't practice bhakti spontaneously. We need constant push. So for that only we keep coming every week. Every week our satsang program, and every Sunday morning and Saturday morning we attend the Japa talks. And today morning also we had this Ekadashi Japa talk, because we need constant inspiration from Shastra and from devotees. Otherwise, if we stay away from the devotional association for 1 week, 2 weeks, or 1 month, etc., we lose interest in practicing bhakti. Bhakti is not a spontaneous activity for us. So till we come to the spontaneous platform, we need continuous and constant inspiration from our associates. So that is the reason we hold satsang programs every week. At least if we attend once in a week, our personality will be charged up, and we continue to practice for that whole week. Of course, the devotees according to time plus circumstances also attend Bhagavatam classes online, etc. So they are all required to charge us regularly to boost our enthusiasm to practice bhakti with sincerity and seriousness. So like that. When that bhakti becomes full in quantity, initially it is less quantity, in a sense, we may practice bhakti activities in a day, maybe 2 hours, 3 hours, or 4 hours, little bit. I'm just giving an example. But eventually, when the bhakti occupies the whole of our day, when it becomes full in quantity, that is called sadhya bhakti. That is the result of sadhana. It becomes spontaneous bhava bhakti. So when a devotee comes to bhava platform, the 24 hours are only used for performing bhakti activities. As of now, we might be using only 2.4 hours in a day. But eventually, when we start to use 24 hours only for bhakti activity, that means we are close to bhava platform. So it is like that. On the other hand, when the bhakti is small in quantity, but has more spontaneity in it, it is called raganuga sadhana bhakti. But though we may perform bhakti for small amount of time, but still there is spontaneity, natural attraction because of our previous life's bhakti. So some children are very spontaneously attracted to devotional activities. That shows in the previous life they performed bhakti very well. That is called raganuga sadhana bhakti. They have natural spontaneity, natural attraction towards serving the Lord. When the spontaneity and quantity both become full, it becomes bhava bhakti of raganuga type. So in this case, there is rasa also, aishwarya also. They want to serve the Lord in one of the four principal rasas, Dasya, Sakya, Vasalya, or Madhurya. So in the previous case, they will serve the Lord only in Dasya ras, with awe and reverence, seeing the Lord as the great personality in grandeur. But in the second case, in this case, they would like to serve the Lord more in an intimate way. Even Dasya Bhav also, that is also the intimate way of serving the Lord. So this is how a devotee can aspire to become Lord's associate, either in Aishwarya or in Madhurya. Madhurya means different rasas, intimacy. Dasya, Sakya, Vasalya, or Madhurya. So this is the explanation of this verse.
Prabhuji, both of this bhakti starts from Alo Shraddha stage only.
Yes. Both will start from Ado Shraddha state. This Raganuga sadhana is nothing but Asakti. We say that Asakti platform that is shown from the very beginning only. Asakti means intense eagerness to serve the Lord in intimacy.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji.
So quickly we'll go through a couple of examples. So Jnana and Yoga do not revive the spiritual part of the subtle body. So they will burn the subtle body, but they will not bring out the spiritual subtle body. This is the problem with Jnana and Yoga. So when the mind of the foolish yogi still under the, actually this is too technical. We will discuss later in the 20th chapter when it comes, this one and this one. But Bhakti gives liberation as an unsought result. Bhakti can give Sahajya Mukti also, but devotees do not want. So devotees never desire liberation. Why? What among the four goals of Dharmartha Kama Moksha is difficult to achieve for one who worships your lotus feet? O Lord, I therefore do not accept these things. That means Dharmartha Kama Moksha, since I am enthusiastically engaged in serving your lotus feet. Devotees' only aspiration is to continue to serve the Lord. Currently, they are serving the deity. In the future, they want to serve the Lord in person. This is the only aspiration of the devotees. On the other hand, the aspiration of the Nishkama Karma Yogis, Jnana Yogis, and Ashtanga Yogis to become inactive, to become neutral. They want to enter into Brahmajyoti and they want to remain in neutrality, in neutral state. No activity. Just remain neutral. Just remain in peace. Just by being neutral, they will experience Brahmananda. But the devotees want to go to Vaikuntha and serve the Lord and experience the happiness of serving the Lord in Dasya Sakya, Shanta, Dasya Sakya, Vasalya, or Madhurya Rasas, either in Aishwarya or in Madhurya. So that is how it is different. So this is the verse which I was referring to. This is a verse from Padma Purana. Bhakti gradually destroys all the karmas, both prarabdha karma and aprarabdha karma. For those engaged in bhakti to Lord Vishnu, Vishnu Bhakti Ratatmanam, step by step, Kramenaiva, the aprarabdha, kuta, bija, and prarabdha karmas are all completely destroyed. So in your NOD class, in the first chapter, you will elaborately discuss, you will understand what is aprarabdha, what is kuta, bija, and prarabdha. Aprarabdha means basically those results are waiting to come in the future lives. And kuta means that is going to come in the next life. And bija means that is going to come next year or in this very lifetime, but in the future. So currently I'm 30, I'm some age, 30 years. So what is going to come in the 35th year, 40th year, 45th year, 50th year, that is called bija. Right now it is bija. So very soon when time comes, it will grow. And prarabdha means which is already manifested. So it's like that 4 kinds of results are awaiting. All these 4 are destroyed by bhakti. Jnana will destroy aprarabdha and kuta. And bija and prarabdha karmas are not destroyed by jnana or yoga. That is the difference between jnana and bhakti. So how does bhakti will destroy prarabdha karmas also? One example is given here. Yannamadeya shravananu kirtanad yat pravanad smaranad api kvachit sadhopi sadhya savanaya kalpate kuta punaste bhagavanu darshanat. So I will not go into the translation, but I will give you a simple example. When a person, a devotee in one's past life, because of some mistake, has taken birth in the family of a dog eaters. The parents, uncles, everyone eat dog. The eating dog is like considered to be the most abominable thing. But this person, since he already practiced bhakti in the previous life, he does not eat dog's meat. Instead, by good fortune, he will come in the association of devotees and takes up bhakti very naturally, very easily. He does not need lot of preaching and lot of background work, etc., etc. Just by meeting a devotee, he gets remembrance of the previous bhakti which he performed in the previous lives. Now the question might come: if he already practiced bhakti in the previous life, how did he take up bhakti birth in the family of dog eaters? That could be the result of some mistake. Because of that, he has taken birth in the dog eaters family. But now, having seen a devotee, he takes up bhakti very seriously. Sadhopi sadhya savanaya kalpate. That means, by practicing bhakti in the association of devotees, this person comes to the platform that he will be given the respect which in general given to the a twice born Brahmana, who is actually the priest who performs all the variety of fire sacrifices. Whatever respect generally given to a twice born Brahmana who actually performs all the Vedic rituals, the same respect will be, same or even more respect will be given to this devotee who though was born in the family of dog eaters. So this is an example of how bhakti destroys prarabdha karma. In general, when a person is born in a family of dog eaters, people in general always criticize. Oh, you born in that so and so family, you belong to so and so community, you are so and so person, you are a dog eater, like that. Any person, just by seeing their parent, just by seeing their birth, their upbringing, they will scold that person, criticize that person. But when the same person takes to bhakti, no one will ever criticize that person with respect to his birth. Everyone will respect him as Prabhu, my dear Prabhu. So great respect is given to that devotee. Even that can be seen in our society also. Prabhupada went to West and transformed all the hippies. And all the hippies eventually, when they became brahmacharis and sannyasis, grihasthas and sannyasis, Prabhupada used to call them the dancing white elephants. Previously, most of them were hippies, the highly neglected people. But when they took up bhakti, they were given the highest respect. That is how bhakti even destroyed the prarabdha karma. The prarabdha of that person is supposed to be criticized, supposed to be scolded as a person born in dog eaters family. But now, because of bhakti, he is respected very highly. This is how bhakti acts upon anyone and everyone. So now, the last part of today's discussion. Hope all of you are following me. Kindly tell me which verse of Bhagavad Gita will define bhakti. Which verse of Bhagavad Gita will define bhakti? If anyone has any thought.
Prabhuji, you have already displayed on the screen.
Oh, sorry, I did not have put that. Okay, no problem. Can somebody guess it? What is that verse? And tell me how that verse describes bhakti.
Is it related to Sthita Pragya?
I don't know. You tell me.
Prabhuji, I don't know the verse, but there's a second chapter, I guess.
You have the book, you open the book and read the verse and tell me. I'll show you the verse also. No problem. If you have difficulty. Traigunna Vishaya Veda Nistraigunyo Bhavarjuna Nirdvando Nitya Sattvasto Niryoga Kshema Atmavan. So according to the Shastra, according to Bhagavad Gita, this is the definition of bhakti. This verse defines bhakti in Bhagavad Gita. Just like currently we are discussing about the verse which defines bhakti in the Bhagavatam. Anyone, any thoughts? How this verse defines bhakti?
Can I try, Prabhuji?
Please, please.
Yeah, what I feel from this verse is that this means three modes which are bound to be there, which are bounding us to this material world. It will be there. Dualities will be there. But we need to tolerate this if we have to break this bonds with the knowledge. So this is how, if you have to be situated in the bhakti, you must learn to tolerate. Tolerate this modes of material nature and its dualities, and stick to your bhakti. So that is how it takes us to bhakti. That's what it is.
Okay, thank you for that tolerating. So I would like to hear from somebody else also. Then we will discuss. Anyone else? So this verse says that not only tolerating, actually we need to go beyond tolerating. Traigunya Vishaya Veda. The Vedas talk about how to deal with the three modes of material nature. The three modes of material nature mainly talks about dualities, happiness, distress, friend, enemy, how to deal with them, all these things. But when it comes to bhakti, one need to go beyond the dualities of the three modes of material nature. Nistraigunya Bhava Arjuna. If at all a devotee wants to attain perfection very quickly and very easily, one need to go beyond the dualities of the three modes of material nature. That's why it is said, Nirdvandvo. One should not be affected by the dvandvas of this material world. Winter, cold, happiness, distress, respect, criticism, such kind of dualities one should not be affected by. Nitya Sattvasto, one should be constantly situated in the association of devotees. Niryoga Kshema Atmavan, one no need to worry about one's yoga and kshema, one's maintenance and well-being. Because one should understand that it is the Lord who maintains everything and everyone. If he is the maintainer of everyone, which includes me also, why should I worry about myself? So this should be the consciousness of a devotee. This is how a person should execute devotional service. That's how Bhagavad Gita defines bhakti. The subject of the Vedas is the three modes. Rise above the three modes, my dear Arjuna, and be free of dualities, nirdvando, situated with the eternal devotees, nitya sattvasto, either here or in the spiritual world, be in the association of the eternal devotees, devoid of desire for gain or preservation. No need to worry about gaining something material or preserving something material. Currently, we have so many material possessions. So we want to gain more and more, and we want to preserve them for the rest of eternity. So Lord says that devoid of desire for gain and preservation, and be engaged in the intelligence given by me. Always in Krishna consciousness. Do not involve yourself with those statements of the Vedas dealing with jnana. That is Bhagavad Gita 11 to 15 and karma 42 to 43. Affected by the three gunas, nistraigunya bhava. So Lord says that don't be affected by so much with karma and jnana. Instead, but you should always follow the Vedic statements dealing with bhakti. Just follow those Vedic statements which always talk about bhakti. Don't follow those Vedic statements which talk about karma or which talk about jnana. By following the statements of bhakti, you are free from fault. So you are free from any fault of committing any sin, or you are free from the fault of being affected by the sinful reactions, etc. Just follow the Vedic statements which are talking about bhakti. By the way, you are following the Vedic rules and regulations and practice at the same time practicing bhakti, and you will go back to Godhead. This is a simplistic formula Lord Krishna is giving to Arjuna. Don't follow the statements that describe karma or jnana. Simplistic advice that Lord Krishna is giving to Arjuna or all of us. Can anyone remember what are the verses talking about in 42, 43? If somebody has book, you can open and see and tell us the import of these two verses. Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, verse number 42 and 43. Yam imam pushpitam vacha prabodhanti avipandita vedavad ratapartha nanatastiti vadina kamatmana swargapara janma karma falapradam kriya vishesha bahulam bhogeshwarya gatim prati. And there are some people called as Vedavada Rathas. Those who have studied Veda, those who say that there is nothing more than karma in the Vedas. Vedas always talk about perform rituals, go to Swarga, enjoy there, come back and enjoy here. Vedas only talk about how to enjoy by performing Vedic rituals. There is nothing more than that in the Vedas. They are called Vedavada Ratha Partha na Anyat Asti iti Vadina. They say that there is nothing more than this important in the Vedas. They prescribe karma, the enjoyment, bhukti. And the other section from 11 to 15 talks about jnana. What is being described in 11 to 15 are actually 11 to 30. It is not 11 to 15 but 11 to 30. Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 11 to 30. What is being talked about? Anyone?
Identity of the soul.
Distinction between body and the soul. It says that you are not the body, you are soul, you are soul, you are soul, you are soul. Talking about soul is called jnana. So indirectly indicating that you are not the body, don't worry about the body, forget about the body. So something like that. So instead, Bhakti says that this body is given a vehicle to you. So use that body in the service of the Supreme Lord. This is what Bhakti says. So Karma says that this body is meant for enjoyment, enjoy as much as possible. And Jnana says this body is not yours, forget about it. But Bhakti says, though this body is not yours, but use this bhakti for executing Lord's service. So this is how the interrelation between karma, jnana and bhakti we can see. There is another reference of bhakti which comes in Bhakti Sindhu. Smruti Smruti Puranadi Pancharatrika Vidim Vina Aikantiki Harer Bhaktir Utpateva Kalpate. So here it says that we cannot practice bhakti without following Shruti, Smruti, Puranas, Pancharatra, other scriptures. Because bhakti should be as per it is given in the scriptures. We cannot whimsically practice bhakti. Whatever we do whimsically cannot be called as bhakti. If somebody practices whimsically on their own and if they say bhakti, that kind of bhakti actually creates disaster to themselves and disaster to society. It means their followers. So that's why Prabhupada always says that we need to take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master coming in the line of disciplic succession, starting from Srila Vyasadeva. Otherwise, there are so many gurus outside in the society. Everyone comes up with their own respective philosophy, which is nothing to do with the Shruti scriptures, Smruti scriptures, Puranas and Pancharatra scriptures. But their practices simply create utpata, disaster within their own life or in the life of their followers. So bhakti should always be as per the Vedic literature. The Vedas deal with both material and spiritual topics. Topics involving the three gunas and topics beyond the three gunas. So topics involving the three gunas is material topic. Topics beyond the three gunas is the spiritual topic. Because the spirit, Atma, Paramatma, Bhagavan, they are beyond the three gunas. So any topic connected to Atma, Paramatma and Bhagavan is Traigunya. So therefore, you should be devoid of the gunas. Therefore, you only dwell on the topics which are talking about Atma, Paramatma and Bhagavan, not about the material topics. By following Nirguna Bhakti offered unto me, cross over the paths dealing with the three gunas, Karma, Jnana, Yoga. So though Vedas are talking about Karma, Jnana, Yoga, but don't worry about them. Just only focus those sections of the Vedas which talk about Bhakti. So that's why Srila Prabhupada always recommends us that only devotees need to read Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Though there are so many Vedic literatures, we don't have to worry about studying all the other books. Because these two books mainly focuses about Bhakti. The rest of the Vedic literatures might talk about Karma, Jnana, Yoga also. If we read them, we get confused. So in order to help us keep focused on the path of Bhakti, we need to thoroughly study Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam and follow them very strictly. Then kind of completes. Such a person who will be free from the dualities within the gunas, such as respect and disrespect, and will remain with the eternal living entities, Nitya Sattva, my devotees, either here or in the spiritual world. Freed from the desire to acquire what you lack and to protect what you have attained, yoga and kshema, because of your taste for my bhakti rasa. Devotees are only willing to taste bhakti rasa. They are not willing to taste that rasa derived by puja, la, pratishtha in this material world. They are not interested in the happiness of having more and more possessions. They are not interested in having the desire to maintain their possessions for the rest of eternity. They are not interested in it. Instead, they are only interested in tasting bhakti rasa, serving the Lord in person. They want to experience that happiness of serving the Lord in person. Only by the process of bhakti can one conquer over the three modes. There is no other way. So this is the statement. But how can you say that only by bhakti surpasses the modes of nature? Again, same Bhagavad Gita says, Mamchayo Vebicharena Bhakti Yogena Sevate Sagunan Samatitetan Brahma Bhuyaya Kalapate. Can anyone guess in which chapter this shloka is there in Bhagavad Gita?
14.26.
Okay, thank you. He who serves only me, the Supreme Lord, through undeviating bhakti yoga, surpasses the gunas. So this shloka, when you read, apparently appears to be not very good, but the meaning actually it is very interesting. Mamchayo av vyabicharena. So normally in our normal society point of view, this word is being heard. Vyabichara. Vyabichara means non-loyal. A person is not loyal to one's master. That is called Vyabichara Vritti. But here it says that avyabicharena. That means one should practice bhakti with 100% loyalty. Avyabhichara means with undeviated, with one pointed attention. Mam chayo, unto whom? Unto me. Bhakti yogena sevate, one who serves me by bhakti yoga with unpointed surrender. Sagunan samati tetan. They will overcome the three modes of material nature and Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. That means they will attain my transcendental nature. They will come to my spiritual abode and they will attain Sarupya Mukti. They will attain same form of mind externally also, and their conscience also will be similar to that of mine. So this is how by practicing bhakti one can overcome the influence of three modes of material nature. The glory of bhakti yoga being nishkama and nirguna is such that it goes without saying that it is without loss or without sin, even if started and discontinued. Even though one may start bhakti and not complete in this very lifetime, but that bhakti will never go in vain. Whatever bhakti we have practiced, that is to our eternal credit. So even though if somebody gives up in between, but one will continue from that point of onwards in the next life. So which verse in Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 talks about this statement? I gave hint also, chapter 2 only. There is one verse talks about this particular aspect. Neha Vikrama Nashosti Pratyavayo na Vidyate Swalpam Apiyasya Dharmasya Prayato Mahato Bayat. Here the Mahato Bayat is from normal point of view is going to Naraka, getting birth in lower species, that is one thing. But little above is Mahato Bayat is not forgetting one's Krishna consciousness. Even though one had started bhakti and forgets bhakti, stops bhakti, practicing bhakti because of circumstances, etc., but that bhakti will never go away. In the next life, with one small trigger, one's bhakti will be rekindled and restarted. That is the glory of bhakti yoga. So it is like that. So thank you very much. We'll stop here. Still 3-4 more slides are there to describe a few more things of bhakti that we will do in the next week. Sorry, today Prabhuji is not there. Rishabhan Prabhu is not there. That's why it took a little more time. So thought of Kirtan might not be there. So any questions before we close?
Prabhuji, at one point you told about, devotees should not be criticized and there should be no fault finding. That is very true because that was also calculated as an aparadha. So, but if we see something, is it, can we discuss or share with someone? That is also known as fault finding and criticizing if we are discussing or sharing with someone some shortcomings.
See, Prabhuji, there are two aspects. Without sufficient purity, we cannot avoid seeing faults or criticizing. In order to avoid seeing faults in others and criticizing them, we need good amount of purity in our heart. As of now, we don't have purity, so we tend to see the fault and we tend to criticize. No problem, but we need to overcome that slowly. But we should be careful that we should not become judgmental. Instead, when we see something wrong, we should simply state that I have observed so and so thing is happening with so and so person, instead of blaming that person as wrong or giving a judgment. So we should be stating our observations instead of giving a judgment, seeing something and then giving a judgment. So and so person is so and so, not like that. So this one thing we need to practice consciously.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji.
Next. Yes, Mataji. One Mataji raised hand. Anita Mataji previously raised hand. Any question?
No, Prabhuji, it was by mistake.
Okay, no problem. Anyone else? Okay, no problem. So if there are no questions, we'll stop here for today.